Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Analysis. I'm your host, Mas Patel. The Middle East is a very dangerous place and it's now on the brink of continuing the bombardment of Gaza by Israel. Donald Trump on Tuesday restated his plans for the US to take over Gaza and permanently resettle its residents as he met Jordan's King Abdullah amid widespread opposition to his plan amongst Washington's Arab allies, including Egypt, Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Zachary Goldman has this report.
Complex thing to do.
President Donald Trump on Tuesday restated his push for the United States to take control of the Gaza Strip and resettle its more than 2 million Palestinian residents as he met with Jordan's King Abdullah. He had previously said the U.S. would buy Gaza, but on Tuesday used a less specific word for how the U.S. might acquire the Strip.
We're not going to have to buy. We're going to have Gaza. We don't have to buy. There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What does that mean?
No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it.
And he seemed to dismiss outright the idea that Palestinian residents might resist their own relocation.
Some people say this is ethnic cleansing. You won't be able to force them to leave the land.
We're moving them to a beautiful location where they have new homes, where they can live safely, where they'll have doctors and medical.
Nor was he daunted by the number of people he'd proposed to resettle.
That doesn't concern you that moving 2 million people from there?
It's a very small number of people relative to other things that have taken place over the decades and centuries.
Trump suggested last month that Egypt and Jordan should take in Palestinians from Gaza, a proposal both U.S. allies strongly oppose. King Abdullah has previously said he rejects any moves to annex land and displace Palestinians. On Tuesday, he avoided answering reporters' questions about his stance, saying he was waiting for what he said was an Egyptian proposal on Gaza.
How do you feel about the U.S. taking Gaza, as the president said?
Well, again, this is something that we, as Arabs, will be coming to the United States with something that we're going to talk about later to discuss all these options.
And Mr. President, take it under what?
Trump has said he would consider withholding aid from Jordan if it refuses to resettle Palestinians. Jordan, which hosts American air bases and is a key intelligence-sharing ally, is already reeling from Trump's 90-day pause in foreign aid.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared on Tuesday the ceasefire in Gaza would end and its military would resume fighting Hamas until Hamas was defeated. That's on the condition that they release all the hostages, every single one, by midday on Saturday.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday declared the ceasefire in Gaza would end and fighting with Hamas would continue. Hamas did not release hostages by midday Saturday.
In light of Hamas's announcement of its decision to violate the agreement and not release our hostages, last night I ordered the military to gather forces inside and around the Gaza Strip. This operation is being carried out at this time. It will be completed in the very near future.
The announcement came after Netanyahu met with several key ministers, who he said gave the ultimatum their full support. It was not immediately clear if Netanyahu meant Hamas should release all hostages held in Gaza, or just the 3 who had been expected to be released on Saturday under the ceasefire. His office did not immediately respond to a Reuters request for comment. U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday also said Hamas should release all of the hostages by Saturday, or face consequences.
I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out.
After nearly 16 months of war, Hamas has gradually been releasing hostages since the first phase of a ceasefire began on January 19th. But on Monday, Hamas said it would not free any more individuals until further notice, over accusations Israel was violating the deal by conducting several deadly shootings, holding up some aid deliveries, and impeding the return of Gazans to the Strip's north. Israel denies holding back aid and says it has fired on people who disregarded warnings not to approach Israeli troops. Following Netanyahu's ultimatum Tuesday, Hamas issued a statement renewing its commitment to the ceasefire and accusing Israel of jeopardizing it.
President Donald Trump's proposal for the US to take over Gaza and forcibly relocate the Palestinians would constitute a blatant war crime if carried out. So says former Executive Director of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth, as he told Reuters.
The former executive director of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth, has responded to President Trump's threats and said any forced relocation of Palestinians would constitute a blatant war crime if carried out.
What Trump is proposing is a blatant war crime and arguably a crime against humanity. Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention of 1949, which Israel, the United States, and basically everybody else has ratified, so this is international law, prohibits forcing people in occupied territory to leave. Exactly what Trump is proposing. What Trump is doing here is, in a sense, endorsing the far-right Israeli view for how to solve the Palestinian problem. Just get rid of the Palestinians. Well, the idea of forced displacement of Palestinians has been on the agenda in Israel for ages. This is the far-right agenda, but it was anathema. Everybody understood it was a war crime. Nobody mainstream endorsed it. And suddenly Trump comes in and tries to legitimize it. Now, just because the US president with all his power says he likes this idea doesn't make it any more legal. It is still a war crime. And indeed, Trump would open himself up to the charge of aiding and abetting war crimes if he were to play a big role in this forced displacement.
The Arab League's Secretary General, Ahmed Abul Ghait, and the GCC Gulf Cooperation Council Secretary General, Jassim al-Budaywi, spoke at the World Government Summit in Dubai, and they commented on Trump's Gaza statement. This is what they had to say.
لا توجهاته أنا شايفها لكن عقله وتفكيره ما أقدرش أقول لك هو بيفكر في أخذ الشرق الأوسط إلى إيه لكن من وجهة نظري أنا شايف إنه إذا مضى الرئيس ترامب بهذا الأسلوب في الضغط على الغزاويين وعلى العالم العربي وعلى المصريين والأردنيين والسعوديين وكل هذه القوى ذات التأثير في هذه المنطقة أتصور أنه وبدلاً من حل القضية الفلسطينية حلاً عادلاً يقوم على الدولتين أتصور أنه بيقود الشرق الأوسط إلى دورة جديدة من الخلاف الشديد بين العرب وإسرائيل.
الكلام أخذ وعطاء، هو يقول راية والعالم العربي يقول راية. عندك صفقة لن يقبلها العالم العربي، هذا واضح، يعني كان الردود واضحة وجلية. لا يمكن أنك أنت تفرض واقع، معليك لا يمكن أنك تفرض واقع.
أنت عندك مشكلة من اليوم حتى السبت القادم اللي هو استمرار وقف إطلاق النار وتنفيذ تبادل الرهائن والأسرى. ده شيء أساسي يجب أن يعمل له الجميع من أجل تمكين الاستمرار، لأنه لو حصل انفجار عسكري للوضع مرة أخرى فتعطل كل هذا الجهد.
أعتقد لا زال الجانب الأمريكي يدرك أهمية أمن واستقرار المنطقة. أعتقد لا زال الجانب الأمريكي يعرف أهمية العالم العربي بالنسبة له وعلاقاته وتحالفاته الاستراتيجية مع العديد من الدول العربية بما فيها الدول الخليجية. لا أعتقد لا زال وسيط، ربما بأبروتش مختلف، ربما بطريقة مختلفة كوسيط، لكن ليس طرفاً.
Well, joining me now to discuss what can only be described as incredible statements from Donald Trump and the discussions taking place in the Arab world is the former ambassador, Palestinian ambassador to the UK, Manuel Hassassian, now the ambassador to Denmark. Welcome to the show, Ambassador. Thank you for hosting me. Ambassador, I've been, and a lot of people will be watching tonight, listening to the remarks of Donald Trump and also the response from the Arab world. Is it the case that regardless of whatever the Arab leaders and the Arab world or even Palestinians themselves might say, because of the power imbalance, the Americans, if they want to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip, perhaps even the West Bank, then the Israelis in cohort with the rest of the Western world will make that a reality?
Well, I think this reality is not going to materialize for the simple fact that, first of all, we have a united Arab stand, we have a united Islamic stand, We have a united European stand against the ethnic cleansing and against the decision of President Trump, who is acting not as a president of the United States as much as a real estate agent who has control of Gaza, as if Gaza belongs to him. He wants to use it for resorts and for development, and he wants to displace ethnically, 2 million Palestinians. The draconian change in American foreign policy when it comes to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict has changed dramatically with Trump. All previous US presidents were portraying themselves as brokers to the Middle East peace process. Here comes a president who is going to use political diktat, military force to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians and, do the investments and pave the way for a secure Israel with no buffer zone whatsoever, even in Gaza, let alone that his next step will be the West Bank.
Yeah.
And that will be the red line that he will cross, when it comes to the legitimacy of the Palestinians in pursuing their self-determination. Now, all the international organizations, including UN and what have you, have resolutions. The international legitimacy is on the side of the Palestinians, let alone the public opinion, the public support that we got during this war is giving us, the strength for resilience and steadfastness on our land. And above all, if you just ask any Palestinian in Gaza or the West Bank about, moving voluntarily, they will tell you we are staying on our land because they don't want to revisit the Nakba of 1948.
But Ambassador, I would put it to you that the red lines that were set by the international community on the Israelis, the supposed red lines, have all been crossed one by one. You've got a place called Gaza, which is full of refugees from historic Palestine who've been there for 75 plus years now, 76 years I believe it is now. However, the Israelis have managed to not only destroy what they said was Hamas militants, they've destroyed the entire Gaza Strip from the north to the south. There are no functioning hospitals. People are living amongst the rubble. And it's undeniable what Trump said, that it's not in effect fit for human habitation, although it was quite ironic. The person who did it was sitting next to him. I'm talking about Netanyahu. Yet here comes an Arab leader, Jordan's King Abdullah. Prior to meeting Trump, he was banging on the table saying that ethnic cleansing would be a red line for him, and that would, be a war. A war would break out between him and Israel. Yet when he sat with the US president, he seemed meek and unable to even articulate his previous position. Is that because it's a done deal, which many are saying that it is, and those Palestinians will be forced out by one way or the other?
I think, the previous statements of His Majesty King Abdullah, when he adamantly said, there is no way that we will accept any forcefully diasporized Palestinians into Jordan.
Yes.
And this is a matter of a principled position, which is based on the right of return to the Palestinians. And hosting, so many millions of Palestinians in Jordan, who constitute basically more than 65% of the population, for him to say otherwise is a political suicide. Now, what Trump has done, he called him to the White House and tried to flex his muscle on him, telling him, first of all, listen, if you don't accept the Palestinian refugees, I'm going to cut the $1.8 billion.
Sure. Absolutely.
And if you accept the Palestinian refugees, I'm going to increase that to $3 billion. And you will be safe, secured boundaries. There is no tension between you and Israel. And that the geographic land, the West Bank, let alone Gaza on the Egyptian side, will be a safety zone for Israel and for you. And of course, His Majesty thinks about the interest of his country. Now, that was, something to be considered by him as a reward, where his security is being, established by the Americans, let alone the Israelis.
Yes.
Second, will be compensated financially, for the influx of Palestinian refugees. And that's why now he started talking about not emotions, but rationalism in accepting such an offer, which will, first of all, he will get rid of the nightmare of Palestine becoming Jordan, because the U.S., Israel will protect him from that. And secondly, this will alleviate his economic, strangulation. Let's say it this way: if he does not accept, the U.S. will stop, giving him money, and other international organizations will be bullied by the president, Trump, not to give him money. So he will be put in a worse scenario as far as he is concerned.
Yes.
But in the general context, I think if he decides to go with the Trump's plan, I don't think there is future stability in Jordan.
And that's the point, isn't it, Ambassador? Because this is about stability across the Middle Eastern region. What we did have is, over the weekend, a furious reaction from the Saudi establishment to any suggestion of a Palestinian state in Saudi Arabia. In fact, it was such a furious reaction that that the mention of Saudi Arabia is now completely off the table. So it leaves Egypt and it leaves Jordan. The Egyptian leader, I understand, has refused to visit Trump at the White House until this suggestion of Palestinians being ethnically cleansed is off the table. However, what we now have is the spectre of hostilities restarting on Saturday if Hamas do not release all the captives that they hold, which is unlikely in any case, which means that the Trump Netanyahu plan might be in the stages of being implemented after that deadline passes. What's your view on that?
Well, actually, Netanyahu and Trump are putting the onus of breaching the truce or the armistice, whatever you want to call it, by Hamas. Hamas has no interest in breaching the truce because they want also to breathe. They want to get rid of the hostages, but they want to stop the war. They want their people to move into the north. They want reconstruction. They want to be part of the future Gaza. So it's not in their interest to try to put hurdles on implementing this deal and going into the second stage of it.
Yeah.
Israel wants to go back to the war, taking Hamas's excuse, because Netanyahu is under pressure from the opposition to finish this deal, and finishing this deal for him is losing this government, this coalition right-wing government, and that will put him in a situation where he would be indicted for his corruption crimes, and there goes Israel, as far as he is concerned, shunned aside, and Hamas will be emerging as a triumphant once Netanyahu is being indicted. So Netanyahu takes the excuse of Trump and his challenge and his threatening attitude that hell will break loose on Saturday if Hamas does not release the hostages. How could they release the hostages when Israel is bombarding, Israel is killing, Israel is not allowing the humanitarian aid, Israel is not allowing the caravans to come in. A few tents have been, came into Gaza.
Yes.
And that will weaken the position of Hamas if they give in under such circumstances to be the weakest in the negotiations. And that will not look good for Hamas in terms of power bargaining with Netanyahu.
Okay, but then I ask you, Ambassador, you obviously represent the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, and which is in the West Bank. It's an established authority. It's recognized by many countries across the world. What is your take in terms of what should take place in Gaza? Realistically, Palestinians have nothing left in Gaza. How are they going to get the materials and the food aid and everything else to allow them to rebuild, yet at the same time balance it out by not having the PA in authority in Gaza? And in fact, there's another faction that's in control there, which gives the Israelis and the Americans the excuse to do as they please.
First of all, Hamas is willing to allow the Palestinian Authority to come and administer Gaza.
Okay.
It's the Israelis who are not, in tune with that proposition. Hamas is conceding as much as it can, to stop this war, because they understood the carnage has cost the Palestinian people a lot of lives. And from that perspective, they are in the bandwagon to have an agreement with Israel to stop the war, and let the United States not to deal between the two parties, because the Americans are trying to inject more fuel into feud between the two parties negotiating.
That's right, yeah.
They don't allow Egypt and Qatar to play a more pivotal role in the process of brokering, this peace process. Hamas has showed all the intentions of trying to stop this war by releasing the hostages. But the facts on the ground and what Netanyahu is doing, he is trying basically to linger the situation for his own political advantage in Israel, let alone President Trump is helping Israel basically by bullying the Palestinians to accept and to release hostages in order to avoid a certain kind of a war that he has in mind to continue the flattening of Gaza and not to give a slight hope for the remaining 2 million Palestinians to stay on their land. And that's why he is gambling on the idea that creating such conducive conditions, which are not going to be livable for the Gazans in the coming 5 or 10 years until reconstruction starts, will push them into voluntary diasporization into Jordan and into Gaza.
Okay,
this
then
is what Trump is trying basically to bet on.
Okay, so on that particular point, Ambassador, realistically, and you can be very short in your answer if you wish, do you believe any Palestinians will take up an offer of voluntary departure?
Categorically, no.
And if they do not take the offer of voluntary departure, do you believe that Palestinians will simply just try and exist with whatever they can do on that land? Do you think that's realistic?
They have existed in the past and they existed in the present. And what more Israel and America could throw bombs on these people, innocent people, they have resisted and they have stayed on their land, and they are not going to leave it once the dust settles down.
Are you worried about the Gaza example, as they call it, or similar terms, will be employed in the West Bank, as we've seen in Jenin, where whole apartment blocks were bombed over the weekend, I believe, that this will now be the new spectre of Israel's attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank? And if so, if you believe that that is the road that they're going down, what can the PA do to make sure that they are not complicit in what takes place? Because some do see complicity between the PA and the Israelis by having this agreement which goes back to the Oslo Accords and working together on crime and security. You're providing security to the very army and the very government that is killing and maiming thousands of Palestinians in the West Bank. Is that something that you've looked at?
Yeah, well, listen, basically, I have to make an announcement here. 59% of the Palestinian Authority's budget used to go to Gaza. And still, we are still paying for Gaza's employees, for paying infrastructure development, for paying electricity, water, and what have you. Okay? So President Abbas has always tried to portray to the world that Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank is the independent Palestinian state to come. So there is no difference between the West Bank and Gaza. Mm-hmm. But the Israelis want to get rid of Gazans and then start the new ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, believing that they could forcefully diasporize 6.5 million Palestinians living between Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank.
Yeah.
How Israel is going to do that, with what potential they are going to do that, to forcefully diasporize 6 million people, when there is a resilience on the part of the Palestinians to stay in their land, including me, I will never leave. Nobody will leave. Can the international community continue to watch another genocide in the West Bank? Mm-hmm. Where is the principled position of a two-state solution, which Europe stands for, China, America, or everybody? Even the Americans, they believe in two-state solution, but à la style américaine, as we say, the way Mr. Trump, perceives it today.
Yes.
So my answer to you, we are not being bullied or threatened or are afraid that we will succumb to the diktat politics, whether of Trump or Netanyahu, and never leave our land. And President Abbas will be the first to go out and say to Israel, enough is enough. I'm not going to cooperate with you. I'm not going to deal with you. This is the choice of my people. If it's resistance until we die, I'm with you.
Well, on that note, Ambassador, I will leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me and giving an insight from your position as a Palestinian ambassador. Folks, lots going on this issue. We'll be engaged on it. Thank you for joining me on Analysis. I'm Mas Patel. See you soon.